Welcome to the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost, the only program on the air in the state of Kentucky that deals with news and commentary and politics from a state perspective and a conservative perspective. So, two unique concepts. You know, lots of TV shows that deal with conservative politics, but it's all about national stuff. What's going on in my state? What's going on in Louisville? What's going on in Kentucky? Well, let's find out. Let's dig into this and let's talk to people that really are involved in this on a daily basis and who are fighting the good fight and are trying to advocate issues that you and I care about. One of the big areas of conservatism is social, just mostly social issues, social conservatism. There's economic conservatism, there's social conservatism, there's lots of aspects. Conservatism is a big umbrella, it's a big tent. But a lot of the issues that are getting the most passion and the most attention in these recent years are the social issues, and so what is that? Well, the pro-life being example, the abortion issue, and LGBT rights and issues and those sort of things. So those are social issues, and honestly, that's what really people really get passionate about. You start affecting people's, children, life and death issues with the unborn. People will fight you over that. I mean, raising my taxes, yeah, I'm going to fight you over that to a point. But you start messing with my kid, that's it. There's some real problems. So I was anxious to do a program on these sort of topics and talk to some folks in this state that are leading the charge, that are on the forefront of trying to make a change from a conservative perspective on these issues. So we reached out to the Family Foundation, and the Family Foundation is a think tank and a advocacy group in this state. They've been around for 20-some years or more, and fighting the good fight. And they know what is happening in this state from from all these different issues, from pro-life, LGBT issues, parental rights, school choice, you name it. They're out there. So today we have David Walls with the Family Foundation. So let's introduce David. Welcome, David, to the show. Welcome to the station. Glad to have you. And
Tom, good to be with you and excited for what y'all are doing with this show and the vision that y'all have.
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for being on. So tell us a little bit about what the Family Foundation does. And, what's the purpose of your organization, and what are you doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. The Family Foundation, we've been here in Kentucky since 1990, and our mission, our vision is to stand up for Kentucky families and the biblical values that make them strong. And we primarily do that, Tom, by advocating for God-honoring public policy across the state. We have some core issues that we work on. Issues related to family, issues related to protecting life and religious freedom, and then also issues related to human sexuality and human dignity, and recognizing that each and every person is created in the image of God and unique and valuable and deserving of protection of their life, and certainly we recognize that when the Lord is honored in the public policies here in Kentucky and in any state and across the nation, it is to the benefit of all people. But as Tom, as you laid out, we've got a lot of serious threats and attacks, whether it be on the issue of religious freedom, whether it be on the issue of life, whether it be on the issue of this march of the LGBT movement. That is, has a lot of concerns as it relates to trampling on parental rights and just so many other issues. And so this really is an important time for the work that we're called to do. We primarily work at the state level. You'll see us. We've got a team that works at the Capitol. We educate across the state. We've got a team that does church outreach and grassroots outreach. We really have a heart to try to see Kentuckians for believers to be the salt and light that we're called to be, but for all Kentuckians to be active and engaged in the policy decisions that are happening at the state capitol, at the local level. We truly believe that there's a saying that I like, that government belongs to those that show up, and so many times we see the other side that is opposed to many of the values that we hold to. is always willing to show up and speak. And so we've had a long history and continue to do so to encourage Kentuckians to stand up for policies that are for the benefit of all Kentuckians.
That's right. You got to show up. You got to show up and vote. You got to speak up. You got to advocate. And because listen, folks, they're playing for keeps now. They're coming for your kids. They're coming for your families. They're coming for. Well, that's probably the most they can come for. I guess once you draw that line, that's it. And so tell me what it's like, because right now we are in really a cultural. I really call it a cultural civil war. I mean, we're at this moment, especially over the past 3 or 4 years, where we've bifurcated as a culture. We have two different views of the world that are so stark, and we're polarizing so much that a group like yours is really on the front line of this battle. And so, what is it like right now to be trying to defend these sort of issues or push these sort of issues right now in today's culture?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I consider it a privilege and honor to lead the Family Foundation and to be involved in this work. And we do have a network of family policy councils that we engage with in other states that are doing similar work. But you're right, we're in a profound moment, culturally speaking, and we sometimes take a lot of arrows for boldly advocating for the policies that we stand for. But ultimately, Tom, I believe in the heart of hearts, certainly here in Kentucky, that the values that we're standing on for strong families, for marriage between a man and a woman, for the right of parents to be engaged, recognizing that parents are ultimately the authority over their children, not government. Standing up for our religious liberties, for our ability to exercise our faith, not just when we're at church, but put it into practice in our lives, in our businesses, in our civic engagement. These are still shared values that I believe most Kentuckians and ultimately most Americans still share. But we're just going to have to continue to be bold advocates for that, and that's what we're going to continue to do here at the Family Foundation. There certainly are a lot of key battles and important issues, and I know we're going to get into some of those here today, Tom. But I continue to be encouraged. When I see these stories of whether it be a parent or a teacher standing up for parental rights in a local school district, or folks stepping forward to run for office for the first time because they just feel compelled to run. It's amazing what seeing one person stand up can make a difference, and we just want to help amplify that.
It sure can. Yeah, there's a lot of good things happening on this front. The battle's been engaged for sure, and that's. But I'm surprised you haven't been canceled yet. This is, it's like if I was going to cancel anybody, if I was on the left, I was going to cancel him. I'm going to cancel that guy at Family Foundation. He's a hater.
Yeah. Tom, I'll share a story. We certainly have had a lot of attempts, and I mentioned to you that we have a network of, while we're all independent, there's a number of states that have organizations similar to us that do similar work at the state level. And you may have heard this story, actually. We have our allied organization in Virginia is actually also called the Family Foundation of Virginia. Oh, yeah. And you may have seen this story. They were the organization leading up to Christmas that had an event for supporters that was at a restaurant in Virginia, and the restaurant essentially kicked them out, shut it down, essentially right as their guests were about to arrive. And so certainly the level of hostility has continued to rise. But for us, all the more reason why to continue to stand boldly for truth and look forward to doing that.
That's right. Yeah. And last thing I want to say about your group is I'm glad it's based in a sort of Judeo-Christian, worldview, because you can't really have social conservatism without an understanding of biblical Christianity or Judeo-Christian values, because that's where it all stems from. You don't have that as a guiding source of your values, then what are you conserving? You're not conserving anything unless you have something that's worth conserving, and that's Judeo-Christianity views itself as these are timeless truths that are beyond our opinions. These are just, and it's great that you guys are based in that approach. So, first issue, let's jump into, and it's a hot button issue, and everybody's following it. And if you watch the major news shows from week to week, you hear the term grooming, right? The LGBT movement. Well, what is it? LGBT, blah, 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 the alphabet. A lot of comedians call it the alphabet mafia, and they are out there pushing their agenda, and they're trying to push it into schools. And it's not just a friendly little, hey, let's look at us and let's talk about our issues. It's more about, no, you need to preach this to your kids, and if you don't, you're going to get harmed in some way. We will either cancel you, you will get fired, and your kids will accept this. And it's the force and the intimidation that is behind this movement, and especially when it comes to the school system. It is just it's beyond unusual. It's creepy. It's to a creepy level. And people are seeing that. Parents are seeing, they're sensing that. They're saying, why is this crazy book in my school about genderqueer stuff? Why does my 10-year-old need to be reading a book about oral sex? And this is, let's get real, folks. This is what's happening. These books are in your schools right now. They're pushing these books. They're not only just pushing the book, they're teaching it in the classroom. And then they're asking kids at the beginning of the year, what is your pronoun? Are you a boy or girl? Are you going to be called, Susie or Johnny? And confusing these young children. So it's a whole process of indoctrinating them into a new worldview that's not traditional American Judeo-Christian views. It's different. It's this new woke ideology that's a totally different worldview. And it's really a pseudo-religion at the end of the day. It's beyond just just ideas and ideology. It's a new way of looking at man. So it's like a whole religion. And so the grooming issue, so basically the LGBT movement is trying to groom our kids to accept the movement, accept their ideas, which in effect confuses their minds, and they're unsure if they're a boy or a girl, or maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm not. It's just all these ideas are being introduced that are just, they have no business being introduced to young children. And so the term grooming is spot on. This is exactly what they're doing. They're trying to change the culture, starting with your kids. It'd be one thing if it was just an innocent thing, So just maybe they'll be nicer to gay people when they get older. No, it's actually confusing these young kids and hurting them. And so I'm sorry, that's my rant. And so I'm really curious about what is going on in this state in relation to this issue. We think that Kentucky's a conservative state and maybe we're protected from these issues. Maybe it's out there in New York or California, but here in Kentucky, we're not having those kind of issues. Au contraire. And so tell us what's happening in Kentucky in relation to these issues in our schools.
Yeah. Well, Tom, one thing that you mentioned that I just want to pick up on, you talked about worldview. And that really at its core, if I could say what we're in is it's a battle of worldviews. And we're seeing this play out in our public schools. Look, I'm a father of 3 young kids, and I have seen this play out in the context of schools that my kids have attended. There really is a concerted effort to promote a worldview that is a part of promoting an LGBT agenda that is, we're past the point of talking about acceptance or treating people with respect and dignity. Look, I mentioned we're a Christian organization. Christians, we recognize that, as I said before, each and every human being is created in the image of God, is valuable as a fellow image bearer. Yes, we believe everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. But we're past that point. We're talking about promoting an agenda and ideology that is specifically designed to target young children and introduce them to ideas and concepts that are harmful, that are dangerous. As it relates to the state of Kentucky, everyone should recognize that this battle is everywhere. Tom, you talked about it being talked a lot nationally and so forth, but this is happening in our schools. Last session we in the session in 2022, we worked on a bill called the Save Women's Sports issue. This was a common sense piece of legislation to protect our female athletes and say we are not going to allow biological males to come in and play female sports. And we saw that this issue was happening. We actually saw it play out at the collegiate level with a UK swimmer who was competing in the NCAA swimming championships. So that issue certainly was a big issue last session, but in this session that's just gotten underway here, one of the big things that we really need to recognize is the need to protect parental rights at a stronger level here in Kentucky. Ultimately, parents are the ones that need to be empowered to protect their kids. Ultimately, schools, even the public school system, is designed to serve parents. Parents are still primary, have the primary role and responsibility to raise and educate their children, and obviously partner with local public school districts in that task. But this is a one of the takeaways I think out of the moment that we've been in these last few years, whether it be COVID, whether it be the lockdowns and stuff, is just a raise awareness. A lot of parents have kind of woken up and seen these agendas and ideologies, whether it be in books, whether it be in discussions happening in classrooms. And so they're wanting to get engaged. And so I am encouraged by that. But, Tom, before the start of this school year, just to kind of bring it home and show how this is directly impacting every school in Kentucky, our governor, Andy Beshear, and the Kentucky Department of Education, under his, leadership, essentially, they put out a LGBTQI toolkit that they essentially recommended and imposed that every school district use. And there were some just really, really concerning resources. Some of them they have taken down, but if folks haven't ever looked and seen this gingerbread person, this is a propaganda piece that the LGBT movement has been using. I think they're on version 4.0 now, but it essentially is trying to confuse children as it relates to what biological sex they are and their sexuality and all these different topics. But one of the other issues that we highlighted with this was a resource that was in the toolkit that's still there as it relates to pronoun guidance. And I know folks have probably heard some of these issues going around, but it essentially was saying that schools need to, any student that wants to identify opposite of their biological sex, wants to use a new name, wants to use a so-called preferred pronoun, that the school district, that the teachers needed to go along with this without questioning. And even more concerning than that, Tom, was that they needed to essentially hide it from parents, that the only possible way that you would let a parent know that their child was coming to school and wanting to identify as the sex opposite of what they actually are is if you had the child's permission to tell the parent. Now, you want to talk about being completely upside down in terms of how
they think they own your kids. The school system, the teachers unions, they think it's their kids. They don't think it's yeah. I'm sorry. That's just ridiculous. Yeah, and they.
It's outrageous.
We should, yeah.
And that's why we've been highlighting it, and we have continued. We launched it before the last year, but we're still engaging on it this year. We've got, if folks go to our website at kentuckyfamily.org, they can get a lot of great resources that we have. But one of the things is we have a take action page where we provide an opportunity for folks to engage on different issues, whether it be bills being considered in front of the General Assembly coming up in this session. But we specifically have a opportunity where folks can go to our website and send a message to our governor and to the commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Education, asking them to completely rescind this ridiculous, harmful guidance.
So what is it, the LGBTI toolkit that the government?
Yes, yeah, and,
okay.
and that resource is still, you can Google that. That's on the KDE's website as we sit here right now. We link to it on our website, and just completely outrageous. But it reinforces why this is a statewide issue. I mean, you have a resource that's been put out by the Kentucky Department of Education that's being recommended, although we know there's more teeth to it than that, recommended for every school district across the state. And Tom, we have seen direct impacts of this already. One of those late last year, was in Anderson County. We had a situation where a school principal had been passed along this guidance, and was obviously had very serious concerns, religious liberty concerns, concerns about being forced to potentially identify someone opposite of their biological sex, but also very concerned about being put in a position where they might be forced to hide something from parents, recognizing that was a fundamental violation of parental rights.
Exactly.
And when they took a stand to alert their community and parents about this policy and the fact that it was being asked to be implemented in their schools, the wrath of the local school district came down, and that assistant principal was put on administrative leave, and the situation is continued to develop. But we had the opportunity to go invited to speak with a number of concerned parents in the community at one of the school board meetings, just to express concern about this toolkit, about this violation of parental rights. And I'll tell you, Tom, I talked about parents waking up. The room was overflowing with parents from the community that were almost in lockstep opposition to this policy, wanting to stand up for their kids. Look, we need to get back to teaching basics. There's important stuff that needs to be taught to our kids, and unfortunately, there's signs that a lot of the public schools are not performing well, and so.
We need to just get rid of public schools. I'm sorry, just get rid of them. They're not. Just go to school choice. Let's give vouchers out, and just the school system it's not worth maintaining. If we can't agree on what a boy or girl is, if we can't agree on what that is in our culture, we can't have public schools, because somebody's values have to reign in a school like that. And the woke agenda, this LGBT toolkit, and somebody with traditional Judeo-Christian values, those things cannot coexist in the same classroom. They cannot. And so if our cultures are going to bifurcate like this, then we can't have a public school system. Back when we had a unified culture 50 years ago, where we had everybody agreed on basic things like what a man and a woman is, then we could have public schools. We could have these institutions because we all kind of shared. We don't now. And honestly, I'm going to say this, and I think you'll agree with me. We say that, but I think you're still dealing with a very radical minority in the country. It's a sizable minority, but it's a radical minority. And they also have all the power. They also are represented by the elites, that have this worldview. But I think generally the population in this country is center right, and it views these sort of issues in a traditional way. But we're being dominated by these elites, and you can define that in many different ways. But they have all the power, and they're forcing this down our throat, and they're authoritarian. And if you're a Christian, or if you're somebody that has a traditional view of the world, you should be shaken up right now, because they're coming after you. And proof is this assistant principal in Kentucky. He stood up for your kids and traditional values, and he got fired. So they're coming after you financially, and eventually, if you keep standing up against this sort of thing, you're going to go to jail. So it's a real fight now. This is a real persecution that's coming, that the other side wants to bring. And that's one reason we did this show. We well, this is nuts. This culture is I'm going to be in jail in a year if we don't stop and say something about with the direction we're going. And that's not hyperbole. Everybody knows it. If you're paying attention to this stuff, you know it. If you stand up against this stuff, you will lose your job. HR department will come to you and go, sir, we kind of don't think you need to work here because you have some values that are kind of not, we don't share this. So you don't want to fly the pride parade or the pride flag in your cubicle? Well, I think you don't need to work here anymore, and that is celebrated on that side of the room. And so, folks, they're coming after you, and this is a real fight. And so, but thankfully, there is a majority. There's a moral majority. I'm using 80s terms, moral majority, whatever. There's a center. I think there's enough people with common sense in this country that believe in fairness and believe in traditional views of the world, that if we just get our heads out of the sand and think about what's at stake, and get behind movements and ideas that the Family Foundation advocates, and just support, just educate yourself go to their website, educate yourself on all these issues in our state, and get engaged. Say something. Don't be afraid to say something to your friends and family, but get engaged and try to move the needle. We're 5 minutes over on this segment, so I'm gonna jump on this segment. We're gonna be right back. And David, thank you. We're talking to David Walls of the Family Foundation, and you're watching the station. And the next segment, we're going to talk about pro-life issues in the state. There's a lot hanging in the balance right now because of our Supreme Court. And just because Amendment 2 went down doesn't mean there's not still a big fight to be had. So we'll be right back. We'll talk about pro-life issues. Welcome back to the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost. And you know what a station is? A station is a traditional Kentucky frontier fort, right? And so what it is, it was built by the pioneers, and every little village and hamlet had one, and it was built to basically defend against the Indians, right? Because the Indians were to come and scalp you, and so you had to get in a station to protect yourself. And so it's where the community came together to defend themselves, defend their children, defend their families. And you know what? We need to build our stations again, because they're coming after your kids and they're coming after your families and your job and your livelihood. Because if you don't agree with this new woke world order that's being implemented, then you're in trouble. And so rally to the station, watch this show, and let's talk to good people like David Walls from the Family Foundation, who's helped leading the charge on some of these issues. And I also have Evan Belcher with us tonight, the intrepid Evan Belcher, who's doing great show prep and doing great things. You had a question about the last segment about parental rights.
So David, on the show, we've kind of talked about parental rights, but what does that mean for our parents and children? And then what changes could we possibly see maybe a year, 2 years down the line if we don't really nip this in the bud now and attack the issue?
Yeah. It's a great question. We have worked for several legislative sessions on trying to get a parental rights bill across the finish line. And Kentucky is one of the few states that, in a minority of states, I believe, that does not recognize parental rights as a fundamental right. And what I mean by that is a right of highest legal precedence, of same level of protection, like free speech and religious liberty. And so it is vitally important that we first recognize that parental rights are fundamental in Kentucky law. But as we talked about in the last segment, some of these other issues, particularly in the school context, providing protections against this pronoun nonsense and these guidance that's coming down from Governor Beshear, ensuring that parents are equipped and have access to any and all information, anything that goes on to their child in the school, they have the right to have that information. So there are several important pieces of a robust parental rights bill that really needs to get passed here in Kentucky to help stem the tide and empower parents to be the ones, or to better be the ones equipped in some of these situations. And so I mentioned that the Kentucky legislative session, the 2023 General Assembly got underway. They met for a week and then they break. This is the short session year. They'll be coming back into session on February 7th. So encourage folks to get engaged with us at KentuckyFamily.org. We'll be providing lots of important information. We anticipate there's going to be some important parental rights bills that are be filed. We'll be communicating about those extensively and encouraging supporters across Kentucky to engage on that as we move forward.
So parental rights basically means that my kids are my kids, not the government's kids.
Right.
Right? Is that basically, does that sum it up?
State. Parents, not the state.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the state didn't have this kid. I had this kid. I raised this kid. Right. I feed this kid. The state doesn't, no, me. Anyway, so bottom line. Okay. Another issue that's very important that we're engaged with right now is the pro-life issue in this state. If you followed this show and you followed Kentucky politics, you knew that we just had a midterm election, and that midterm election was an amendment called Amendment 2. It was there to codify pro-life perspective in our Constitution, and it went down in defeat. Not by a huge margin, but it went down. And so and it's lots of reasons for that. Lots of out-of-state money. It's Roe v. Wade kind of ginned up the opposition. Lots of issues there that caused it to go down. But a lot of people don't know there's still a trigger law that was already passed prior to that outlawed abortions in this state, and that law is being challenged in the Supreme Court. And we thought we would have heard a verdict by now, and let me say this too. Jim Waters on our show had a great point. Jim Waters from the Bluegrass Institute. He said that he thought that the Supreme Court was sort of waiting to see how Amendment 2 was going to shake out. If it loses, he felt like that might embolden them to be more pro-choice in their ruling, and so well, it went down. And I think I'm kind of reading the tea leaves. I'm still learning Kentucky politics, but I think our Supreme Court in this state is a little bit more liberal than it is conservative, from what I'm learning. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But so we're all holding our breath, trying to figure out how they're going to rule on that, and what does that mean? And so what's happening on that issue, David?
Yeah, Tom. Certainly, we were the Family Foundation, along with some of the other pro-life organizations in the state, heavily involved in supporting Amendment 2. Certainly, we were disappointed, but it's that it went down closely. The important thing to remember is that Amendment 2 was an opportunity to just make crystal clear that the Kentucky Constitution does not contain a right to an abortion. But the reality is, the Kentucky Constitution, even without Amendment 2 being passed and amending the Kentucky Constitution, there is no right to an abortion in the Kentucky Constitution.
Exactly.
Just like we knew and have always known that there was no right to kill an unborn child in the United States Constitution, there is no right in the Kentucky Constitution. And so since Roe was overturned and the issue of protecting unborn life was finally returned to the states, Kentucky is one of the states, as you mentioned, that had already passed, and we have been a part of supporting that, what's known as a trigger ban, the Human Life Protection Act. This is a law that effectively prohibits all abortion in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so as soon as Roe was overturned, the pro-abortion industry went into court here in Kentucky, as they've done in other parts of the country and in other states, and challenged those laws. And so that court case was playing out as the Amendment 2 vote was heading towards November, and then they actually had oral arguments in the case at the Kentucky Supreme Court back in December. And so we are waiting to see what their decision is going to be. To be clear, the abortionists are essentially arguing there's a secret hidden right to abortion in the Kentucky Constitution, and they want to strike down really all of our pro-life laws, while they're right now challenging the Human Life Protection Act and the heartbeat law. So we are looking for that. But look, the reality is, as we sit here right now, abortion is prohibited in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So that means that lives are being saved. And we saw that in the abortion numbers that came out, in the precipitous drop-off in abortions being reported here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky in the second half of last year. And, we're just so thankful for that. Every day that goes by is another day that lives are being saved. But as you know, Tom, the battle to stand for human life, the battle to ensure ultimately that each and every unborn is equally protected under the law continues. And we're going to be continuing to be strong advocates for life. There's so much incredible work that's going on in the pro-life movement. We have been blessed to help come alongside and support so many of the great pregnancy care centers. There's at least 50 pro-life pregnancy care centers across Kentucky that are just doing tremendous work on this issue, as across the nation. And so there's certainly going to be a lot of work on the issue of life as we move forward. Tom, as we know, just this week, the Biden administration, and not to get too far down into kind of national politics, but the Biden administration, the FDA essentially has now opened the door for the abortion pill to be distributed in pharmacies across the nation. And so this is tremendously concerning. The abortion pill folks may not know that actually there are more abortions are performed by the abortion pill than actually surgical abortions in abortion facilities, and so this is something we're going to be engaged in watching very closely. We have been encouraging our supporters to reach out to the national pharmacy, CVS, Walgreens, that have indicated they're going to start distributing these pills. Shouldn't be distributing them here in Kentucky and other states that have prohibited abortion. But we need to make our voice known that we do not want to see our pharmacies turn into essentially centers promoting abortion, where
Well, they become abortionist. Yeah, CVS becomes an abortionist.
Yes.
That's what they're doing. Yeah. So not in our state, but nationwide, in states that do allow it, they will be selling that. So if you're a viewer and you're concerned about that, and I am, I'm going to make the call. I'm going to call CVS and say, I'm sorry, I'm moving my account to Walmart or whoever doesn't sell that stuff. But yeah, that's important. We need to deal with that. And so. Okay. But let me game this out though. So if the Supreme Court somehow finds this hidden right of to abortion in our state constitution, which they shouldn't, based on the general reading of it, but if they somehow strike this trigger law down, what can we do? What can the legislature do? I'm just what would be the next step? Couldn't we just write another law that would or do we have to get a constitutional amendment to change the Constitution? Or do we have to wait 40 years like Roe v. Wade to get it overturned in this state? I don't know. I'm just, as an expert, I'm just curious. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of it's going to depend on what they decide.
Yeah, right.
But look, the reality is, let's go back again to Roe being overturned. When Roe was overturned, the United States Supreme Court rightly corrected one of the most egregious Supreme Court decision in our nation's history, and they returned the issue of regulating abortion to we the people and our elected representatives. Here in Kentucky, our elected representatives in the General Assembly. They are the ones that have the authority and are charged to pass laws. It is not the place of state judges now to step in, or our state Supreme Court to make themselves into a super legislature. And so if they were to go the full way and completely strike down these laws and invent some kind of right to an abortion under a incorrect reading of a right to privacy, I think any and all options of response should be on the table. Look, the General Assembly has the authority to impeach judges. This would be the most egregious decision in our state court history if they were to go this direction. Look, I really think the General Assembly needs to be thinking and being prepared to stand up for their ability to be lawmakers. It was very clear. It was very clear in the arguments that took place in December that some of the justices desire to be lawmakers. As I was watching the oral arguments, that was abundantly clear. And look, if someone wants to make a law on abortion policy and they're a judge, they need to resign from that seat and go run for the legislature where our laws are being made. So I do think the General Assembly, our Attorney General's office, needs to be prepared for any and all options to stand up. We're talking about a life or death issue. We're talking about a fundamental issue as it relates to our state constitution. And so obviously we will be closely watching that issue as we move forward. And I think we've got to be prepared to look at all options.
Yeah, wow. I like that approach. Listen, the impeachment is in the Constitution for a reason. So if these judges start legislating from the bench, which is egregious, and it's Roe v. Wade was just a tragedy because that's exactly what they did. They legislated from the bench, and if that happens in this state, I say it's time to pull the impeachment card out and pull these guys down.
It was almost 50 years that we waited for Roe to be overturned.
Yeah,
we cannot allow, if we have a similar state level Roe decision, we cannot allow that to stand and have 50 years of a court-imposed regime legalizing abortion.
That's right.
Where we are sitting right now with laws that have been passed that are saving lives. And so we've got to stand boldly for life. This
Yeah.
is a time for bold leadership.
That's right. Yeah, on this issue. If you're not going to be bold on this issue, then you don't deserve to be a Republican or a conservative, or you shouldn't call yourself that. So that's exactly right. Well, and we have a strong majority in the House and the Senate in this state, so I think we could even pull that off. So that'd be tremendous. Well, listen, we're out of time on this, but David, thanks for being on the show. We were anxious to talk to you guys as we launched this show earlier in the year, and so we're glad we finally did. And we'd love to have you back, and tell viewers how they can stay engaged with what you do and what's happening at the Family Foundation.
Absolutely. Best way is to go to our website at KentuckyFamily.org. A lot of folks know the Family Foundation for many, many years. We put out a newspaper publication. We obviously also publish it on our website called The Kentucky Citizen, where we cover important family values issues in depth. And so folks can sign up for that free publication via the mail or online on our website at KentuckyFamily.org. Lots of great resources on our website. We're also very active on social media, so engage with us on Facebook and on Twitter. This is a particularly important time as we're, as I mentioned, the General Assembly underway, the 2023 session, with it being a short session. We will be sending out a lot of updates, action alerts when it's time to engage and contact your legislators. A lot of great resources, and anything that we can do to be helpful to equip Kentuckians to stand boldly for families and for the biblical values that keep them strong. We will be doing that.
Awesome. Well, keep up the good work. Go to their website, go to their Facebook. They have some great articles about what's happening right now. And so this is great. David, thanks for being on the show. And you're watching The Station. We'll be right back.